Alrighty, if you're serious about building muscle, you've definitely asked yourself this question. Should I be focusing on bodyweight training or should I be hitting the barbells? Well, today, we are going to settle that debate once and for all.
It's a tough one, right? On one hand, you see these incredible calisthenics athletes with superhuman control over their own bodies. But on the other hand, the classic advice you hear everywhere is lift heavy to get big. So, when your goal is packing on muscle, where do you actually start? Let's break it all down.
Okay, here's our game plan to get you from confused to confident. First, we're going to look at the two core philosophies. Then we'll get into the actual science of how muscles grow. After that, we'll dive deep into both calisthenics and weightlifting. And finally, we'll reveal a hybrid blueprint that gives you the absolute best of both worlds. Now, before we go any further, let's get one thing straight. This isn't just a simple choice between different exercises. We're talking about two fundamentally different philosophies for how to build strength. And trust me, each one brings something unique to the table that the other just can't. This right here frames the two approaches perfectly. You can think of calisthenics as the path of internal mastery. It's all about learning to control your own body as the ultimate weapon against gravity. Weightlifting, on the other hand, is the path of external challenge. It's about using outside forces to strategically isolate and overload your muscles, basically forcing them to adapt and grow.
So before we can even begin to compare which method is better, we have to establish the ground rules. What's the actual biological goal we're shooting for here? What is it on a cellular level that actually triggers your muscles to get bigger and stronger?
The fancy science term for all this is hypertrophy. That's it. It's the biological adaptation we're chasing. Doesn't matter if we're using a barbell or a pull-up bar. So the million-dollar question is, what scientifically proven methods do we have to actually trigger it?
Well, decades of research have pretty much boiled it down to these three main triggers. Number one, mechanical tension. That's the raw force your muscles generate against a heavy resistance. Two, metabolic stress. You know that pump feeling you get? That's it. Blood rushing into the muscle. And three, muscle damage. We're talking about tiny micro tears that signal your body to rebuild bigger and stronger. Any effective training style, and I mean any, has to deliver on these three things.
Okay, so with those scientific triggers fresh in our minds, let's take a look at our first discipline, calisthenics. How does mastering your own body weight actually stack up when it comes to building muscle?
Well, the most obvious advantage is just how accessible it is. You don't need a fancy gym membership. All you need is a floor and maybe a pull-up bar. But the deeper benefit, the real magic, is the type of strength it builds. Because you have to stabilize your entire body through these complex movements, you develop insane core strength, great joint stability, and what we call functional strength, the kind of strength that actually translates to real-world activities.
And please, don't make the mistake of thinking bodyweight training is easy. We're not talking about doing hundreds of basic push-ups here. Advanced movements, like the human pullover or the single-leg levitation squat, these things generate an enormous amount of mechanical tension. This is proof that your own body can provide more than enough resistance for some serious muscle growth.
Now, let's flip the coin and look at the other path, weightlifting. This is the classic approach, right? Using barbells, dumbbells, and machines to systematically apply resistance and force your muscles to adapt. The superpower of weightlifting is its precision. It is by far the most direct, most straightforward way to apply progressive overload. You just add another plate to the bar. Simple. This gives you precise, measurable progress. It also lets you isolate specific muscles, like your biceps or your calves, in a way that's really hard to do with just body weight. That makes it incredibly efficient for maximizing hypertrophy. And this brings us to the single most important principle in all of strength training. This is the one that governs both disciplines: progressive overload. You see, to keep growing, you have to consistently challenge your muscles with more than they're used to. But the way each of these disciplines achieves this, well, that reveals their fundamental difference.
And right here, we see the core distinction. Weightlifting achieves progressive overload quantitatively. You add more weight. It's a linear, measurable step. Calisthenics, however, progresses qualitatively. You improve the skill of the movement itself, like going from a standard push-up to a much tougher diamond push-up. The analogy is just perfect. One is like adding another book to the shelf. The other is like learning an entirely new language. Both are progress for sure, but they feel and are measured very differently.
So, after all that, which one is better for building muscle? Well, here's the truth. The debate itself is flawed. Asking which one is actually the wrong question.
The smartest, most effective, and most sustainable approach isn't about picking a side, it's about combining their strengths. The rise of the hybrid athlete proves this. The best long-term results come from creating a system that builds that raw absolute strength with weights, while also developing the relative strength, control, and mobility of calisthenics. It's like one builds the engine, and the other perfects the chassis.
So here's your blueprint. Step 1, build a solid foundation with calisthenics. Master the fundamental movements, the push-up, the bodyweight squat, the row. This builds that crucial stability. Then step 2, integrate weighted overload. Strategically use weights where they're most effective, like heavy squats and deadlifts, to really drive that measurable progress. And step 3, prioritize safety and consistency. Always warm up, focus on perfect form, and remember that just showing up is half the battle. And that brings us to the final and maybe the most crucial point. Look, the perfect program on paper is absolutely useless if you don't actually do it. The single most important factor for your success isn't the specific exercises you pick, but your ability to stick with the plan consistently over months and years. Sustainability beats intensity every single time.
So let's reframe this whole debate. Maybe the goal isn't to become just a calisthenics guy or a weightlifter. Maybe the goal is to build a truly capable human body, one that has the raw, absolute strength from lifting heavy things, but also has the grace, the control, and the functional power that comes from mastering your own body weight in space.
Remember, science is always evolving. To avoid missing the next scientific analysis and protocol, don't forget to turn on notifications and subscribe. See you in the next video. Let's meet in the comments to discuss what topic we should cover next.